Thank you very much. Thank you to our witnesses for being here with us today. This is certainly going to be a memorable committee hearing for me, not necessarily because of the subject, as much as it's my first committee hearing as a member of Congress, and you'll be the first witnesses that I get to question. So thank you again for being here today. Mr. Harrell, you said in your testimony that to address the economic risks we face from China, we must expand our cooperation with friends. Mr. Williams, you said in your testimony that to reduce supply chain reliance on China, we should implement proactive trade policies with third countries. I agree with both of you. The U.S. should establish and reinforce meaningful trade relationships with other partners in the Indo-Pacific region. The U.S. should also form and strengthen partnerships in law enforcement and regulatory spaces on issues central to this committee, like countering trafficking, improving transparency, and securing markets. So, Mr. Harrell, Mr. Williams, how can the U.S. leverage the tools that are at our disposal, like the World Bank, IMF, Export-Import Bank, to help America's friends better compete against China and their CCP-backed economy?
Sure, happy to start. And I think this is actually a really good segue from the questions Ms. Garcia was asking, which was about Latin America. And I thought Mr. Harrell answered very well, but one area I would have elaborated further on that you've touched on is trade agreements. And if we want to build those relationships, if we want to build those partnerships, we need to have trade agreements. And the reason that's important for supply chains is China's going around the world. They're cutting trade agreements where they're cutting tariffs with other countries. That makes it easier for them to facilitate trade between them. We aren't doing the same thing, and so we are at a cost disadvantage when companies are making decisions about supply chains, and that's why we need market access trade agreements. Now, building on that, the other tools that Mr. Harrell touched on that I would elaborate on again are the Development Finance Corporation. And one of the things I recommend is employing a program at DFC similar to CTEP, the China Transformational Export Program at XM, which will allow DFC to cut through red tape, be more strategic in working with our partners and allies. On XM, one thing that we haven't gotten into yet, but I think is worth considering, is do we want XM to be able to take more risk in certain circumstances? XM has something called the default cap, which is about 2% is the maximum amount of defaults that they're allowed to have, or they totally lose their authority to make investments. And I think we need to look at that and say, look, if we're going to provide an alternative to China, we need to take a little more risk. And it may be a controversial policy, but I think it's worth looking at if we're serious about providing a real alternative.
I think another area that we could look at is better integrating our development tools with our trade tools, right? Because if you are a company that is, say, looking to get out of China to do light manufacturing, and you're looking at Latin America, what do you need, to put a sort of a facility down the Caribbean or in somewhere in Central America or in Mexico? You need, local skilled labor, right? You need a bunch of things on the ground. You need transport and physical infrastructure for the goods you're manufacturing, and then you need access to the United States so you can actually sell it here in your market. And I think we don't currently do a good job of kind of integrating those three tools, and I think we could do a better job of saying if we want to see supply chain friendshoring, how are we going to use our foreign assistance, our development finance, these other kind of tools to create the enabling environment for that to happen as we pursue these kind of more trade initiatives, whether it's APAP or IPAF or other things like that.
Thank you very much, and I yield back.